The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Roosevelt Elementary School as children hurried down the hallways with their backpacks bouncing behind them. The familiar sounds of excited chatter and locker doors slamming filled the air. It was just another ordinary Monday morning, or so everyone thought. In classroom 3B, Mrs. Patterson was busy arranging worksheets on her desk when she heard the gentle tap of small footsteps approaching her door. She looked up to see her students, filing in one by one, each finding their usual spot and settling in for the day ahead. After 23 years of teaching third grade, she knew the routine like the back of her hand, but today, something felt different. Little Lily walked into the classroom just as the final bell rang. She was a quiet girl with curly brown hair and big hazel eyes that always seemed to be observing everything around her. Usually, Lily would quietly slip into her seat in the third row and pull out her pencil case, ready to start the day. But this morning, she stopped right at the back of the classroom and just stood there. Mrs. Patterson finished writing the date on the whiteboard and turned to face her class. 24 pairs of eyes looked back at her, all sitting properly in their seats, hands folded on their desks. All except one. "Good morning, class," Mrs. Patterson said with her usual warm smile. "Please take out your reading journals so we can start with our daily writing prompt." The children began rustling through their backpacks, pulling out notebooks and pencils. All except Lily, who remained standing by the coat hooks at the back of the room. Mrs. Patterson tilted her head slightly. "Lily, sweetie, please come take your seat so we can begin." Lily shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Her small hands clutched the straps of her pink backpack, and she looked down at her shoes. "I can't," she whispered, so quietly that Mrs. Patterson almost didn't hear her. "What was that, dear?" the teacher asked, taking a step closer. "I said I can't," Lily repeated, her voice barely louder than before. Mrs. Patterson felt a small flicker of confusion. In all her years of teaching, she had dealt with shy children, defiant children, and everything in between. But something about Lily's response didn't fit any of those categories. The girl wasn't being rude or challenging. She seemed almost frightened. "Well, you need to sit down so we can start our lesson," Mrs. Patterson said gently but firmly. "Come on now, your seat is waiting for you." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "I really can't. Please don't make me." By now, some of the other children had started to notice the unusual situation. Tommy, who sat in the front row, turned around in his chair to see what was happening. Soon, whispers began to spread across the classroom like ripples in a pond. "Why isn't Lily sitting down?" asked Chloe. "Maybe she's in trouble," suggested Ben. "Is she being bad?" wondered little Amy. Mrs. Patterson raised her hand to quiet the class. "Eyes up here, everyone. Let's focus on our own work." But even as she spoke, she kept glancing back at Lily, who remained frozen in place by the back wall. The teacher tried a different approach. "Lily, would you like to sit in a different seat today? Maybe by the window?" Again, Lily shook her head. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "I can't sit anywhere. I just can't." Now, Mrs. Patterson was truly puzzled. She had seen children refuse to sit because they were upset about something at home, or because they were feeling sick, or even because they were trying to get attention. But there was something in Lily's voice that suggested this was different. The child seemed genuinely distressed, not defiant. "All right, class, let's begin our reading," Mrs. Patterson announced, deciding to deal with Lily's situation after she got the other children started on their work. "Please open your journals and write about your weekend. Remember to use complete sentences and check your spelling." The classroom filled with the sound of pencils scratching against paper and children quietly discussing their weekend adventures. Mrs. Patterson helped a few students who raised their hands with questions, but her attention kept drifting back. To Lily, the little girl remained standing in the exact same spot, swaying slightly as if she was having trouble keeping her balance. Her backpack was still strapped to her shoulders, and she hadn't moved to get any of her school supplies. Mrs. Patterson noticed that Lily's face had gone pale, and she seemed to be gripping the edge of a nearby desk for support. After about 15 minutes, Mrs. Patterson walked over to where Lily was standing. She knelt down so she was at eye level with the child and spoke in a soft, private voice. Lily, I can see that something is bothering you. Can you help me understand what's wrong? Lily looked up at her teacher with those big hazel eyes, now red from holding back tears. I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson. I know I'm supposed to sit down. But I really can't. It hurts too much. It hurts? Mrs. Patterson's voice became even gentler. What hurts, sweetie? But Lily just shook her head and looked away. I can't tell you. I'm not supposed to tell anyone. A chill ran down Mrs. Patterson's spine. In her many years of teaching, she had learned to recognize when something wasn't right with one of her students. And right now, every instinct she had was telling her that Lily was in some kind of trouble. You know what? Mrs. Patterson said, standing up. Why don't you just stay right there for now? You don't have to sit if it doesn't feel good. But maybe you could take your backpack off and get your journal out? You can write standing up if that's more comfortable. Lily nodded gratefully and carefully slipped her backpack off her shoulders. Mrs. Patterson noticed how slowly and carefully she moved. As if any sudden motion might cause her pain, the morning continued with math lessons and reading time, while the other children worked. At their desks, Lily remained standing at the back of the classroom. She tried her best to participate from where she was, raising her hand to answer questions and following along with the lessons. But Mrs. Patterson could see that the effort of standing for so long was taking its toll. By the time recess arrived, Lily's legs were visibly shaking. The other children bounded out of their seats, eager to run and play outside. But Lily moved slowly toward the door, still refusing to sit down even for a moment. Mrs. Patterson watched from the classroom window as her students played on the playground. Most of them were running around, playing tag, or climbing on the jungle gym. But Lily stood alone by the fence, leaning against it for support. Even when other children invited her to join their games, she politely declined and remained where she was. When the children returned from recess, Mrs. Patterson made a decision. Whatever was going on with Lily, it was serious and she couldn't ignore it any longer. The little girl was clearly in distress, and as her teacher, Mrs. Patterson had a responsibility to help her. As the day wore on, Mrs. Patterson kept a close eye on Lily, noting every detail of her behavior and trying to piece together what might be wrong. Whatever the truth was, she was determined to get to the bottom of it before the day was over. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the classroom floor as Mrs. Patterson tried to focus on teaching her lesson about fractions. But no matter how hard she tried to concentrate on math problems and pie charts, her eyes kept drifting to the back of the room where Lily still stood. It had been over 3 hours now since the school day began, and the little girl hadn't sat down once. Not during morning work, not during story time, not even when the class gathered on the reading carpet for their daily book. While 23 other children sat cross-legged in a circle, Lily had remained standing at the edge of the group, swaying slightly like a tree in a gentle breeze. Mrs. Patterson noticed how Lily's small hands had started to grip the edge of the nearest desk more tightly. The child's knuckles were turning white from the effort, and her legs trembled beneath her like she was struggling to hold herself up. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, and her usually neat ponytail was starting to come loose from all the subtle movements she made trying to find a comfortable position. All right, everyone, Mrs. Patterson announced to the class. Please work quietly on the problems on page 47. I'll be walking around to help if you need me. As the children bent over their math workbooks, Mrs. Patterson made her way to the back of the classroom. She pretended to organize some papers on a shelf while keeping a close eye on Lily. The girl was barely holding herself upright now, and Mrs. Patterson could see beads of sweat forming on her forehead, despite the cool temperature in the room. Lily, Mrs. Patterson whispered, moving closer. Are you feeling sick, honey? You look like you might need to visit the nurse. Lily shook her head quickly, almost frantically. No, please. I'm okay. I just can't sit down. But I'm okay, I promise. There was something in the way she said it that made Mrs. Patterson's heart skip a beat. It wasn't the voice of a child being stubborn or difficult. It was the voice of someone who was scared, really scared of something Sweetie, nobody can stand up for this long without needing a break. Your legs must be so tired. Even grown-ups need to sit down sometimes? I know, Lily whispered back, her voice cracking slightly. But I can't. It hurts too much when I try. Mrs. Patterson felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. What hurts, Lily? Can you tell me where it hurts? But Lily just pressed her lips together and shook her head. A few more tears escaped from her eyes, and she quickly wiped them away with the back of her hand when lunchtime arrived. Mrs. Patterson watched as her students lined up excitedly, chattering about what treats might be waiting in their lunchboxes. Lily joined the line, but she moved so slowly that she ended up at the very back. In the cafeteria, Mrs. Patterson observed from the teacher's table as Lily stood next to an empty seat at her usual lunch table. Her friends seemed confused at first. "Sit down, Lily," called out her table-mate Jessica. "We saved your spot." "I'm okay standing," Lily replied quietly, opening her lunchbox while remaining on her feet. "That's weird," said another child. "Why don't you want to sit?" "Just because," Lily answered, taking a small bite of her sandwich. Mrs. Patterson noticed that Lily was barely eating. She took tiny bites and chewed very slowly, as if even the act of eating required tremendous effort. When one of the lunch supervisors came over and told Lily she needed to sit down like all the other children, Mrs. Patterson quickly intervened. "It's all right," she told the supervisor. "Lily has my permission to stand today." The supervisor looked puzzled but nodded and moved on to help other students. Mrs. Patterson made a mental note to speak with the principal after lunch about the situation. During afternoon recess, the same pattern repeated itself. While the other children ran around the playground, climbing monkey bars and playing hopscotch, Lily found a spot by the brick wall of the school building and leaned against it. Mrs. Patterson watched through the window as several children approached Lily, trying to convince her to join their games. "Come play foursquare with us," shouted Tommy, bouncing a red rubber ball. "No thanks," Lily replied, managing a weak smile. "I just want to rest here for a while." "But you've been resting all day," pointed out Chloe. "You haven't been running?" "Or playing at all." Lily didn't have an answer for that. She just stood there against the wall, looking smaller and more fragile than Mrs. Patterson had ever seen her. When the children returned from recess, Mrs. Patterson noticed that Lily was walking even more carefully than before. Each step seemed deliberate and slow, as if she was trying very hard not to jar or bump anything. When she reached her standing spot at the back of the classroom, Lily let out a small sigh of relief and immediately grabbed onto the desk for support. "Okay. Class," Mrs. Patterson said, trying to keep her voice normal despite her growing concern. "Let's get ready for science. We're going to learn about plants today." As she began drawing a diagram of a flower on the whiteboard, Mrs. Patterson kept stealing glances at Lily. The child was trying so hard to pay attention and participate in the lesson, but it was clear that she was in distress. Her face had gone from pale to almost gray, and she was breathing in short, shallow breaths. About halfway through the science lesson, Mrs. Patterson noticed Lily's grip on the desk slipping. The little girl's legs buckled slightly, and for a moment, it looked like she might fall. Mrs. Patterson quickly moved toward her, but Lily managed to catch herself and regain her footing. "That's it," Mrs. Patterson thought to herself. "This has gone on long enough." She turned to the class and said, "Everyone, please read the next 2 pages in your science books quietly. I need to step out for just a moment." Mrs. Patterson walked over to Lily and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Honey, I need you to come with me to the hallway for a minute. We need to talk." Lily's eyes went wide with fear. "Am I in trouble?" "I'm sorry I haven't been sitting. I'm really sorry." "No, sweetie, you're not in trouble at all," Mrs. Patterson assured her. "I just want to make sure you're okay. You've been standing all day, and I'm worried about you." Reluctantly, Lily followed her teacher out into the empty hallway. Mrs. Patterson knelt down so she could look directly into Lily's eyes. "Lily, I've been teaching for a very long time, and I've never seen a child who couldn't sit down for a whole day unless something was really wrong. I need you to help me understand what's happening so I can help you." Lily's bottom lip started to quiver. "I want to tell you, Mrs. Patterson, I really do. But I'm scared. What if I get in trouble?" What if something bad happens? Mrs. Patterson felt her heart breaking for this sweet little girl who was clearly carrying a burden far too heavy for someone so young. Lily, I promise you that whatever you tell me, I will do everything I can to help you and keep you safe. Sometimes grown-ups need to know when children are hurting so they can make things better. The little girl looked up and down the empty hallway as if checking to make sure no one else could hear. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet that Mrs. Patterson had to lean in close to catch the words. Something happened at home last night, and now it hurts too much to sit down. But I'm not supposed to tell anyone because it would make things worse. Mrs. Patterson felt the world shift around her as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Mrs. Patterson felt her heart pounding as she looked into Lily's tearful eyes. The hallway seemed to grow quieter around them, and for a moment, time felt like it had stopped completely. Those few words Lily had whispered carried a weight that made Mrs. Patterson's stomach drop. "Lily," she said very gently, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to know that you are safe right now. You're here with me, and I'm going to make sure nothing bad happens to you." The little girl nodded, but fresh tears began streaming down her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly, as if she was afraid someone might see her crying. "Can we go somewhere private?" Lily asked, looking around the hallway nervously. "I don't want anyone to hear." Mrs. Patterson's mind raced. She knew this was a critical moment, and she needed to handle it exactly right. After 23 years of teaching, she had received training on situations like this, but it felt completely different when it was happening to one of her own students. "Of course, sweetie. Let's go to the reading corner in our classroom. Everyone else is busy with their science books, and we can talk quietly there." They walked back into the classroom together. Mrs. Patterson guided Lily to the cozy reading corner at the side of the room, where a few beanbags and soft cushions were arranged around a small bookshelf. The other students were still focused on their science reading, occasionally whispering to each other about the pictures in their textbooks. Mrs. Patterson grabbed a small chair and placed it near the reading corner. But she noticed that Lily remained standing even in this more private space. The teacher sat down in the chair so she wouldn't tower over the child, making herself seem less intimidating. "Lily, you mentioned that something happened at home last night that's making it hurt to sit down. I want you to know that whatever you tell me, I believe you, and it's not your fault." Lily's small hands fidgeted with the hem of her school uniform skirt. She opened her mouth to speak several times, but no words came out. Finally, she took a shaky breath. "My mom had to work late again last night," Lily began, her voice so quiet that Mrs. Patterson had to lean forward to hear. "She's been working double shifts at the diner because we need the money. So it was just me and my stepdad at home." Mrs. Patterson nodded encouragingly, even though she could already sense where this story might be heading. "He was watching TV and drinking those cans that make him smell funny and act different," Lily continued. "Mom always tells me to stay in my room when he's drinking those, but I got hungry and I went to the kitchen to get a snack." The little girl paused and looked around the classroom, making sure none of the other children were paying attention to their conversation. "He got really angry at me for being in the kitchen. He said I was making too much noise and bothering him. I tried to say sorry and go back to my room, but he got even madder." Mrs. Patterson felt her hands trembling slightly, but she forced herself to remain calm and supportive. "What happened then, sweetie?" "He grabbed me and said I needed to learn a lesson about following rules. He said Mom wasn't there to protect me, so he was going to teach me to be more respectful." Lily's voice cracked as she spoke. "He hurt me, Mrs. Patterson. He hurt me in a way that no one is supposed to hurt a little kid." The words hung in the air between them like a dark cloud. Mrs. Patterson felt tears forming in her own eyes, but she blinked them back. This wasn't about her feelings right now. This was about helping this brave little girl who had just shared something incredibly difficult. "Lily, I am so proud of you for telling me this. It takes incredible courage to talk about something so scary and painful. But he said if I ever told anyone, something terrible would happen to my mom and me. He said we would lose our house and have nowhere to live. He said it would be all my fault if our family got broken up." Mrs. Patterson reached out slowly and gently placed her hand on Lily's arm. Lily, listen to me very carefully. None of this is your fault. Not what happened to you, and not anything that might happen next. You're just a little girl, and it's the job of grown-ups to keep you safe. When grown-ups hurt children, it's never the child's fault. But what if he finds out I told you? What if he gets even angrier? That's not going to happen, sweetheart. There are people whose job it is to protect children when they're in danger. And right now, my job is to make sure those people know that you need help. Lily looked up at her teacher with wide, frightened eyes. What do you mean? What are you going to do? Mrs. Patterson chose her words very carefully. She knew this next part would be scary for Lily, but it was necessary. Lily, when a child tells a teacher that someone has hurt them, the teacher has to tell other people who can help. It's not because I want to get anyone in trouble, but because I want to make sure you're safe and that this never happens again. You're going to call my mom? Lily asked, looking panicked. I'm going to call some people who are specially trained to help children in situations like yours. They're going to want to talk to you and your mom, and they're going to make sure you get the help you need. But what about what he said? About us losing our house? Mrs. Patterson felt her heart breaking all over again. This 8-year-old child was worried about adult problems that no child should ever have to think about. Lily, there are people who help families stay together while keeping children safe. Their job is to find solutions that protect you without punishing you or your mom for something that wasn't your fault. The little girl was quiet for a long moment. Processing everything her teacher had told her, Mrs. Patterson could see the fear and uncertainty in her expression, but also something that looked like relief. Will you stay with me when you call them? Lily asked finally. Absolutely, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here with you through all of this. And you really don't think it's my fault? Lily, I want you to listen to me and remember this forever. What happened to you was wrong. It should never have happened. And it is absolutely, completely, 100% not your fault. You're a good kid who deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. For the first time all day, Lily's face showed a hint of something other than fear and pain. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was the beginning of hope. Mrs. Patterson, will you help me call my mom at work? I think she needs to know what happened. She always told me to tell her if anyone ever hurt me, but I was too scared because of what he said. Of course, sweetheart. But first, I need to call some other people who can help us figure out the best way to keep you safe. Is that okay? Lily nodded slowly. I trust you, Mrs. Patterson. You've always been nice to me, and you've never lied to me. Mrs. Patterson felt a tear escape despite her efforts to stay strong. Thank you for trusting me with something so important, Lily. I promise I'm going to do everything I can to help you. As they sat there in the reading corner, with the afternoon sun streaming through the classroom windows and the other children, quietly working at their desks, Mrs. Patterson realized that this was one of those moments that would change everything. For Lily, for her family, and even for herself as a teacher. But it was also the beginning of healing and the first step toward making sure this brave little girl would never have to stand in the back of a classroom again because she was too hurt to sit down. Mrs. Patterson glanced at the clock on the classroom wall. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, and she knew she had to act quickly. The other students would be dismissed in just over an hour, and she needed to make sure Lily was safe before then. Lily, I need to make some important phone calls now. Would you like to sit here in the reading corner while I do that? You can look at books if you want, or just rest. I still can't sit down, Lily reminded her teacher quietly. But I can stand here by the bookshelves. That's okay. Mrs. Patterson nodded and walked over to her desk. She picked up the phone and looked back at Lily, who was nervously watching her every move. The little girl looked so small standing there, among the colorful children's books, like she was trying to disappear into the wall. Remember, I'm going to be talking to people who help children, Mrs. Patterson said gently. These are good people whose job is to keep kids safe. The first call Mrs. Patterson made was to the school nurse, Mrs. Rodriguez, she had worked with the nurse many times over the years, and she knew she could count on her to handle the situation with care and professionalism. Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Mrs. Patterson from room 3B. I need you to come to my classroom right away, please. I have a student who needs medical attention, and it's a sensitive situation. Within 5 minutes, Mrs. Rodriguez appeared at the classroom door with her medical bag. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had seen just about everything in her 20 years as a school nurse. Mrs. Patterson met her at the door and spoke to her in hushed tones. Explaining the situation, Mrs. Rodriguez's expression grew serious as she listened. She nodded and followed Mrs. Patterson to the reading corner where Lily was waiting. "Hi there, Lily," Mrs. Rodriguez said in a warm, calm voice. "Mrs. Patterson told me you're not feeling well today. I'm here to check on you and make sure you're okay." Lily looked nervously between her teacher and the nurse. "Am I going to get in trouble?" "Oh, sweetie, no. You're not in any trouble at all," Mrs. Rodriguez assured her. "I just want to make sure you're not hurt and that you're feeling as comfortable as possible." The nurse knelt down to Lily's level and spoke very gently. "Lily, Mrs. Patterson told me that someone hurt you and that's why you can't sit down. I need to check and see if you need any medical care. Is that okay with you?" Lily nodded slowly, though Mrs. Patterson could see how scared she was. "Mrs. Patterson is going to stay right here with us the whole time, okay? And we're going to go to my office where it's private and quiet." The three of them made their way down the hallway to the nurse's office. Mrs. Patterson had arranged for the assistant principal to watch her class while she was away. As they walked, she noticed how carefully Lily moved, taking small, deliberate steps. In the nurse's office, Mrs. Rodriguez was incredibly gentle and professional. She explained everything she was doing and asked Lily's permission before each step. After a few minutes, she confirmed what Mrs. Patterson had suspected. Lily had indeed been hurt and needed proper medical attention. "Lily, you're going to be okay," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly. "But I think it would be good for a doctor at the hospital to take a look at you to make sure you heal properly." While Mrs. Rodriguez was examining Lily, Mrs. Patterson stepped into the hallway to make her next phone call. Her hands shook slightly as she dialed the number for Child Protective Services. She had made this type of call twice before in her teaching career, but it never got easier. "Hello, this is Mrs. Patterson. At Roosevelt Elementary School. I need to report a case of child abuse. I have an 8-year-old student who has disclosed that she was harmed by her stepfather last night." The person on the other end of the line was professional and kind. They asked Mrs. Patterson several questions about what Lily had told her, and what the nurse had found during her examination. They assured her that a social worker would be at the school within the hour. Next, Mrs. Patterson called the police. This call was even harder to make, but she knew it was necessary. The officer who answered was understanding and told her that someone would be sent to the school right away. Finally, she called the principal, Mr. Johnson, to let him know what was happening. He immediately came to the nurse's office to see if there was anything he could do to help. When Mrs. Patterson returned to the nurse's office, she found Lily sitting carefully on the edge of a chair, finally able to rest for the first time all day. The little girl looked exhausted but somehow seemed lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Scared," Lily admitted, "but also kind of relieved. I'm glad I don't have to keep it a secret anymore. It was really hard to keep such a big secret all by myself." Mrs. Rodriguez had given Lily some pain medication that was safe for children, and it was already helping her feel more comfortable. She had also called the hospital to let them know that a young patient would be coming in. "Lily," Mrs. Patterson said, sitting down next to her, "some people are going to come here to talk with you. They're going to ask you questions about what happened, and they might want you to tell your story again. It might feel scary, but remember that all of these people are here to help you." "Will you stay with me when they come?" Lily asked. "As much as I'm allowed to, yes. And Mrs. Rodriguez will be here too." About 30 minutes later, there was a gentle knock on the nurse's office door. A woman in her 40s entered, carrying a briefcase and wearing a warm smile. "Hi there, I'm Miss Chen from Child Protective Services. Are you Lily?" Lily nodded but moved a little closer to Mrs. Patterson. "I've come here because Mrs. Patterson called to tell us that someone hurt you, and we want to make sure you're safe. Is it okay if we talk for a little while?" Miss Chen was incredibly skilled at talking with children. She spoke in a calm, non-threatening way and let Lily take her time answering questions. She explained that her job was to help families and protect children, not to get anyone in trouble just for the sake of it. "Lily, can you tell me about what happened last night?" Miss Chen asked gently, slowly, with many pauses and some tears. Lily told her story again. Miss Chen listened carefully and asked a few follow-up questions, but she was patient and never made Lily feel rushed or pressured. A few minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. One was a woman named Officer Taylor who specialized in cases involving children. She was dressed in regular clothes instead of a uniform, which helped Lily feel less intimidated. "Hi Lily, I'm Officer Taylor. I know this has been a really hard day for you, and I want you to know how brave you are for telling the truth about what happened." The officer asked Lily some similar questions to what Miss Chen had asked, but she was equally gentle and understanding. She explained that they would need to talk to Lily's stepfather to hear his side of the story, and that there would be an investigation to figure out the best way to keep Lily safe. "What about my mom?" Lily asked. "She doesn't know what happened yet. She's still at work." "We're going to call your mom and ask her to come here," Miss Chen explained. "She needs to know what happened so she can help us figure out how to keep you safe." Mrs. Patterson watched as these trained professionals worked with Lily. She was amazed by how skilled they were at making a frightening situation feel more manageable for a young child. They answered all of Lily's questions honestly, but in ways that didn't make her more scared. As they waited for Lily's mother to arrive, Mrs. Patterson held the little girl's hand and reminded her over and over again that she had done the right thing by telling the truth. "You are so brave, Lily, and you are going to be okay. All of these people are here because they care about you and want to help you." For the first time since morning, Lily managed a small but genuine smile. "Thank you for believing me, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you for helping me." 3 weeks had passed since that difficult Monday afternoon when everything changed for Lily. Mrs. Patterson sat at her desk early in the morning, preparing for another day of teaching, when she heard familiar footsteps approaching her classroom. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson," came a cheerful voice that made her heart swell with happiness. Lily walked into the classroom with a spring in her step that hadn't been there for months. Her hair was neatly braided, she was wearing a new dress, and most importantly, she was smiling, really, truly smiling. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mrs. Patterson replied, standing up to greet her student. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better," Lily said, and then did something that made Mrs. Patterson's eyes fill with happy tears. She walked straight to her desk in the 3rd row and sat down in her chair like it was the most natural thing in the world. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of activity, but everything had worked out better than anyone had dared to hope. After Lily's mother, Janet, had arrived at the school that day, the truth had come out quickly. Janet had no idea what her boyfriend had been doing to her daughter when she wasn't home. She was horrified, heartbroken, and immediately took action to protect Lily that very evening. With the help of Officer Taylor and Miss Chen from Child Protective Services, Janet had packed up their belongings and moved herself and Lily to a safe place. Lily's stepfather was arrested and charged with child abuse. He was currently in jail awaiting trial, and there was a restraining order that prevented him from coming anywhere near Lily or her mother. Mrs. Patterson had visited Lily in the hospital that first night. The doctors had taken good care of her, treating her injuries and making sure she would heal properly. But more than the physical healing, it was the emotional support that had made the biggest difference. Lily had been assigned a counselor, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in helping children who had experienced trauma. Dr. Martinez was a gentle woman who used art therapy and play therapy to help Lily process what had happened to her. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, Lily would go to see Dr. Martinez, and slowly but surely she was learning to trust again and leave the fear behind. "Mrs. Patterson," Lily said, raising her hand during morning math time, "can I share something with the class?" Mrs. Patterson looked at her with surprise. Lily had always been a quiet student, but since returning to school, she had become even more reserved. This was the first time she had volunteered to speak in front of everyone. "Of course, Lily. What would you like to share?" Lily stood up next to her desk and looked around at her classmates who were all paying attention with curious expressions. I want to tell everyone that sometimes bad things happen to kids, but it's really important to tell a grown-up you trust if someone hurts you. And if the first grown-up doesn't believe you or can't help, you should keep telling until someone does help you. The classroom was completely quiet. Even though Lily hadn't shared the details of what had happened to her, somehow the other children seemed to understand that she was talking about something very serious and important. Mrs. Patterson helped me when I was scared to tell anyone. What was wrong? She believed me and made sure I got help. And now I'm safe, and the person who hurt me can't hurt me anymore. Tommy raised his hand. Lily, were you really sick that day when you couldn't sit down? Not sick exactly, Lily replied thoughtfully. Someone had hurt me, and it made it too painful to sit. But Mrs. Patterson figured out that something was wrong, and she helped me get better. Mrs. Patterson felt incredibly proud of Lily's courage, both in speaking up that day 3 weeks ago and in sharing with her classmates now. She had grown so much in such a short time. During recess, Mrs. Patterson watched through the window as Lily played on the swings with her friends. She was laughing and chatting, looking like the carefree 8-year-old she was supposed to be. It was such a different picture from that day when she had stood alone by the fence, too hurt and scared to join in any activities after school. Janet came to pick up Lily, just as she had done every day since the incident. She had quit her second job at the diner and found a better-paying position at a local office that allowed her to have normal hours and be home with her daughter every evening. Mrs. Patterson, Janet said, walking into the classroom, I can never thank you enough for what you did for us. If you hadn't noticed that something was wrong and taken the time to really listen to Lily, I don't know what would have happened. Mrs. Patterson smiled and gave Janet a warm hug. Any teacher would have done the same thing. Lily is a special little girl, and she was so brave to speak up when she did. The counselor says she's doing really well, Janet continued. Dr. Martinez thinks that because we got help so quickly and because Lily felt believed and supported, right away she's healing faster than many children do in these situations. Lily came running into the classroom, backpack bouncing behind her. Mom, guess what? I got 100% on my spelling test today. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Janet said, giving her daughter a big hug. I'm so proud of you. As they prepared to leave, Lily turned back to Mrs. Patterson. Will you be here tomorrow? Of course I will. I'll be here every school day, just like always. Good, Lily said with satisfaction. I like knowing you're here. After they left, Mrs. Patterson sat down at her desk and reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about how different Lily's story could have been if she hadn't trusted her instincts that day. What if she had simply insisted that Lily sit down and stop being difficult? What if she had ignored the signs that something was seriously wrong? The experience had changed Mrs. Patterson too. She had always been observant with her students, but now she was even more attuned to the subtle signs that might indicate a child was in trouble. She had attended additional training sessions on recognizing abuse and had even volunteered to be part of the school's child protection team. A month later, Mrs. Patterson received a letter that made her cry happy tears. It was from Lily, written in her careful third-grade handwriting. Dear Mrs. Patterson, thank you for saving me. I know that sounds like something from a movie, but that's really what you did. You saved me from being hurt more, and you helped me and my mom start a new, better life. Dr. Martinez says that what happened to me wasn't my fault, and that I'm very strong for telling the truth. She also says that you are a hero for listening to me and believing me. I think she's right. You are my hero. I hope that if other kids ever need help like I did, they have a teacher like you who will notice and care enough to help them. Love, Lily. Mrs. Patterson kept that letter in her desk drawer, and whenever she had a particularly challenging day, she would read it and remember why she became a teacher in the first place. Lily continued to thrive. Her grades improved, she made new friends, and she even joined the school choir. She still saw Dr. Martinez regularly, but the sessions had become more about building confidence and coping skills rather than processing trauma. 6 months later, Lily's stepfather was convicted and sentenced to several years in prison. By that time, Lily and her mother had settled into their new life completely. They had moved into a small but cozy apartment. Janet had been promoted at her job, and they were both attending a support group for families affected by domestic violence. On the last day of third grade, Lily gave Mrs. Patterson a drawing she had made. It showed a little girl standing in a classroom, but this time she wasn't alone at the back of the room. She was surrounded by other children, and there was a teacher nearby with a big smile. And most importantly, the little girl in the picture was sitting down at her desk, looking happy and safe. "This is how I want to remember this year," Lily told her teacher. "Not the bad part at the beginning, but everything good that came after you helped me." Mrs. Patterson hugged Lily tightly and whispered, "You helped yourself by being brave enough to speak up. I just did what any caring adult should do when a child needs help." As Lily walked out of the classroom for the last time that year, heading off to enjoy her summer vacation and eventually move on to fourth grade, Mrs. Patterson knew that this was a story she would never forget. It was a reminder that sometimes the most important part of being a teacher had nothing to do with math or reading or science. Sometimes the most important thing was simply paying attention, listening with your heart, and being willing to act when a child needed help.